Almost everyone is waiting for the wrong thing. When people imagine the great evil at the end of the world, they picture a person, a single figure who has not arrived yet, who will step onto the stage one day with a name and a mark and an army, and only then will the darkness begin. But the oldest letters in the New Testament say something far stranger and far more unsettling than a villain who is still coming. They say the thing you are waiting for is already here. Almost 2,000 years ago, the Apostle Paul wrote a single sentence that should stop you cold if you actually slow down and read it. He wrote that the mystery of lawlessness is already at work, not coming, not someday, already working. In his own time and in every century since, and notice what he did not say. He did not say a man is already here. He said a mystery, a hidden thing, a force is already at work, moving behind the surface of the world, held back by something he refused to fully name, and building, slowly, toward the day it would finally be revealed. So tonight I'm going to walk you through the 5 things these ancient texts actually say about the unseen force that they claim is already loose in the world, and the single mysterious thing that, according to the oldest reading, is the only reason it has not yet broken completely free. Let me set the scene because the context is the part almost nobody knows, and it changes everything. The letter we are reading is the second one Paul sent to a small frightened community in the city of Thessalonica, and they were frightened for a specific reason. A rumor had reached them, maybe a forged letter, maybe a panicked preacher, claiming that the day of the Lord had already come, that the great and terrible day had begun and they had somehow been left behind in it. They were terrified. A small community new in their faith, meeting in someone's home in a hostile city, told by a message that may even have carried Paul's own name that the day of rescue they had been promised had already happened, and that they were still here. That left them only 2 unbearable options. Either everything they believed was a lie, or it was true, and they had been weighed and found wanting and left behind in the dark. People were abandoning their work. People were unraveling. The letter we are about to read was written straight into that panic by a man trying to talk frightened people back from the edge, and Paul writes back to calm them down. But here is the strange thing. In the very act of calming them, of telling them the end had not yet arrived, he reveals something more disturbing than the thing they were afraid of. He tells them, "Do not be shaken. That day will not come until certain things happen first, until there is a great falling away, and until a certain figure he calls the man of lawlessness is revealed for who he is." So far, that sounds like the standard picture, a future event, a future person. But then Paul adds the line that breaks the whole comfortable picture open. He says that even though that man has not been revealed yet, the mystery of his lawlessness is already at work. The unveiling is in the future. The force itself is in the present. And that single distinction, the difference between a thing that is coming and a thing that is already operating, is the entire reason this passage has haunted careful readers for 20 centuries. And before we go further, you need to hear what Paul says this lawless figure actually does, because the word lawlessness is not vague to him, it is precise, and it is enormous. He writes that this one will oppose and exalt himself above everything that is called God, above everything men hold sacred, until he takes his seat in the very temple of God and displays himself, proclaiming that he himself is God. Sit with the scale of that. This is not a criminal breaking a law. This is a being that abolishes the highest law there is, that walks into the holiest place in existence and sits down in the seat reserved for the divine and announces that the seat is now his. That is what lawlessness means at its root in this text. Not chaos in the streets, the tearing down of the final boundary, the one between the creature and the creator, the erasing of the line that says there is anything at all above you. And here's the connection that makes the hair stand up. That image, a figure enthroning himself in the temple and claiming to be God, is not new with Paul. He is reaching back, deliberately, to the ancient warnings in the book of Daniel about a coming desolation set up in the holy place, the same image the Gospels record being spoken of as a sign of the end. Paul is not inventing a fear. He is telling a frightened church that the old buried warning, the abomination that exalts itself in the sanctuary, has a hidden engine, and that engine is already turning. So that is the first of the 5 things these texts claim, and it is the foundation for everything else, so sit with it. The evil Paul is describing is not, at its root, a person. It is a force. He uses a very particular word, a word we translate as mystery, and in the ancient world that word did not mean a puzzle to be solved. It meant a hidden thing, something real and active that is concealed from ordinary sight, working underneath the visible world. So when he says the mystery of lawlessness is already at work, he is making a claim that is almost cinematic in how unsettling it is. He is saying there is an unseen engine of lawlessness, of the tearing down of every limit and every law, and that engine is not idling, not waiting in the wings for its cue. It is already running. It was running in Paul's own day in the 1st century, and the plainest reading of his words is that it has never once stopped. The face of it, The person who will one day embody it completely has not stepped forward yet. But the power behind that face, he insists, has been pushing against the world the entire time. You are not waiting for the darkness to arrive. According to this text, you have been living inside its early stages your whole life and never knew the name for it. And here's the detail that should remove any doubt that this is what Paul meant, because he is not the only one who said it. In the same generation, in a completely different set of letters, the Apostle John wrote almost the exact same thing, and he said it even more bluntly. John told his readers that they had heard a great deceiver was coming at the end, and then he stopped them cold and said that even now already, this spirit was in the world. Two of the most important voices in the entire New Testament, writing separately to different communities, reached the identical and unsettling conclusion. The thing everyone was bracing for as a future arrival was, in their own words, already present. One of them called it a mystery already at work. The other called it a spirit already in the world. And once you notice that two independent witnesses, writing separately to different communities, are saying the same impossible thing, you can no longer wave it off as one man's strange phrasing. For the earliest church, this was a shared and sober conviction. And that brings us to the second thing, and this is the one that genuinely keeps scholars up at night because it is the single most debated sentence in the entire letter, maybe one of the most debated in the whole New Testament. Paul tells the Thessalonians that this lawless force has not yet broken fully loose for one reason, and one reason only. Something is holding it back. He calls it simply, the thing that restrains. He writes that they know what is restraining it now, so that the lawless one will be revealed only at his proper time. And then he says that the one who now restrains will keep on restraining until he is taken out of the way. And then, and only then, the lawless one will be revealed. Read that again, because Paul does something maddening here. He says, you know what it is. He assumes his readers already understand the thing he is referring to, so he never spells it out. The Thessalonians knew. We do not. He took the answer to his grave and left us a sentence with a hole in the middle of it, a deliberate blank where the name of the restrainer should be, and there is a real possibility for why he was so cryptic, and it is chillingly practical. If the thing restraining the lawless force was the Roman Empire, the power that ruled Paul's entire world, then writing plainly, telling a church in a letter that Rome would one day be removed, and only then would the great evil be unleashed, was a sentence that could get every person who held that letter killed. To predict the fall of Rome in writing was sedition. So one very old reading says Paul deliberately spoke in code, naming the restrainer out loud when he was with them in person, but reducing it to you know what I mean on paper, because the truth was too dangerous to commit to ink. The blank in the sentence may not be carelessness at all. It may be the fingerprint of a man choosing his words to keep his people alive. And there is a second strangeness buried in the original wording that almost no translation can carry across, and it deepens the mystery instead of solving it. When Paul refers to the restrainer, he does not use one consistent form. First he calls it a thing, a what, something neutral that is holding the force back. But a breath later, in the very same passage, he switches and calls it a he, a who, a person who restrains, a what and a who, in the space of two sentences for the same role. Scholars have broken their teeth on that shift for centuries, because it means the restrainer is somehow both an impersonal force or structure and a personal being at once. That is why the guesses split the way they do. The what camp reaches for the empire, the rule of law, the order of government, the structure that holds society together. The who camp reaches for a person or a spirit, a heavenly being, an angelic guardian, even the Spirit of God himself working through the church. Paul infuriatingly used both words and explained neither. And I am not going to tell you which camp is right, because nobody alive can prove it, and this channel does not hand you certainty it has not earned. But here is what every single interpretation agrees on, and it is the chilling part. Whatever the restrainer is, it is a dam. It is the one thing standing between the world and a flood. And the force on the other side of that dam is not passive. It is already there. It is already pushing. The whole horror of the image is that the lawlessness is not waiting politely for permission. It is pressing against the barrier right now. And the only question the text leaves open is how long the barrier holds. The third thing these texts say is how this force actually operates when it moves. And it is not what you would expect. It does not come the way evil comes in a children's story, with obvious menace and a face you instantly distrust. Paul says that when the lawless one is finally revealed, his coming will be accompanied by power and by signs and by wonders. But he adds one devastating word to all of it. He calls them lying wonders, false signs, a counterfeit. This is the part people miss, and it is the most important part for actually recognizing the thing. The force of lawlessness does not announce itself as darkness. It arrives wearing the costume of light. It comes with displays of power that look genuine, with wonders that look miraculous, with answers that look like salvation. It imitates the very thing it is trying to replace. An older line in the same tradition warns that the adversary disguises himself as an angel of light, and that is exactly the mechanism Paul is describing here. The deception is not a side effect. The deception is the weapon. A force that came at you snarling would be easy to refuse. A force that comes at you glowing, offering you exactly what you wanted, performing wonders you cannot explain, telling you it is the answer to everything. That force does not have to break down your door. You open it, and that is precisely why it has been able to work for 2,000 years in plain sight, without most people ever seeing it for what it is. There is a second condition Paul named at the very start, and it is the one that explains who all of this was ever able to touch. Remember that he said the day would not arrive until two things happened: the man of lawlessness being revealed, and before that, a great falling away. The word he chose there is heavy. It does not mean people drifting off out of boredom. It means a defection, a mass abandonment, an entire turning away from what was once held to be true. And notice the order he puts it in. The falling away comes first. The revealing comes after, as if to say the lawless one does not step onto an innocent stage. He steps onto a stage that a great many people have already, with their own hands, helped to build, after they had already turned from the truth. The falling away is the soil. The revealing is what finally grows up out of it. And that is exactly why the next thing Paul says lands like a hammer, because it tells you precisely who this entire deception was ever able to touch. Which leads directly into the fourth thing, and this is the most uncomfortable claim in the entire passage. So I am going to give it to you exactly as the text gives it, and let you sit with it. The deception does not work on everyone. Paul is very specific. He says the lying wonders and the deception take hold of those who are perishing, and then he tells you precisely why they are vulnerable. It is, he writes, because they did not receive the love of the truth. That is the hinge. The force does not overpower people at random, kicking down the door of every mind by brute strength. It works on the people who had already, quietly, on their own, stopped loving what was true. People who preferred the comfortable lie to the uncomfortable fact. And here Paul stops being comforting. He writes a line so severe that readers have argued over it for centuries. He says that because they refused the love of the truth, a strong delusion is sent upon them, so that they will believe the lie. And notice who he says sends it, not the lawless force, God. He writes, plainly, that God sends them the delusion. That is the sentence readers have agonized over for 2,000 years, because on its face it sounds like heaven itself actively handing people over to the very lie they already wanted. It is the same unsettling logic as the old account of the ruler whose heart was hardened, or the later warning that God simply gave people over to the thing they had chosen. The text is not describing the innocent being tricked against their will. It is describing a person who kept refusing the truth being finally allowed to have exactly what they kept reaching for, all the way down. Read coldly, stripped of any sermon. That is a description of a sorting mechanism. The deception is self-selecting. It is a filter. It does not create the turning away from truth. It completes it. The people it captures are the people who had already let go of the rope. You do not have to accept a single line of the theology to feel how modern that sounds. The idea that a flood of convincing lies does its deepest damage, not on the people who were tricked against their will, but on the people who, somewhere along the way, decided they would rather not know what was true. The text says the force is already at work. It also says it is already sorting. And there is a detail in the original language here that is almost too neat to be an accident. The word Paul uses for the lawless force being at work, the engine already running in the world, is the same root he uses a few lines later for what is sent into those who refuse the truth. He says, in effect, that because they would not love what was true, a working of delusion is sent into them. The same root, the force is at work, and the delusion is at work, grown from the very same word, as if Paul is telling you they are one machine running at two scales, the vast hidden engine turning out in the world, and the small private version of that engine planted inside the mind of the person who had already chosen the lie. And the fifth thing is the shape of where it is all heading, because Paul does not leave it as a force that simply hums along forever in the background. He says it is building toward a moment. The mystery is at work now, hidden, restrained, deceiving, sorting, but it is moving toward a revealing. There is a day, he writes, when the restrainer is finally removed, when the dam is taken out of the way, and in that instant the lawless one steps out of the shadows and is seen in the open for the first time, no longer a hidden mystery but a face. But here is the twist that the doom criers almost always leave out. The line Paul writes in the very same breath. The moment the lawless one is finally revealed is also the moment of his undoing. Paul says the Lord will consume him with the breath of his mouth and destroy him by the sheer brightness of his coming. Read that slowly because it rewires the whole thing. The force spends the entire age hidden, restrained, working in secret, precisely because the one time it is dragged fully into the light is the one time it can be destroyed. Its power was always in the concealment. The revealing it builds toward across the centuries is, in the very same instant, its end. That is not the picture most people carry. They imagine the unveiling as the triumph of the darkness. The oldest text says the unveiling is the start of its defeat. That is not a single prophecy about one future afternoon. It is the climax of a process the text insists has been quietly underway since before the ink on Paul's letter was dry. And once you hold all 5 of those movements together at once, something clicks into place about why this passage has never stopped feeling current in every single century since it was written. Because what Paul describes is not a date, it is a pattern, and the pattern repeats. A limit that everyone once agreed was sacred gets torn down, and it is called progress. A counterfeit arrives wearing the costume of light, and it is welcomed as the answer. And the people who fall hardest for it are not the most ignorant in the room. They are the ones who had already quietly decided they would rather not know what was true. Every age has watched some version of that sequence play out and felt the same chill of recognition, the unsettling sense that words written on a page 2,000 years ago were somehow describing the exact room they were standing in. That recognition is real, and it is the genuine power of this passage. But it is also the precise spot where almost everyone who reads it goes off the rails, so I have to be completely honest with you about the line between what these words actually say and what they do not. So let me be completely honest with you about what this does and does not mean, because the honest version of this is far stronger than the wild one, and because nearly everyone who has touched this passage has gotten this part wrong. I am not going to tell you that a specific living person is the man of lawlessness. I am not going to tell you that some recent event was the moment the restrainer was removed. People have been making those exact guesses for 2,000 years, naming names, marking dates, pointing at emperors and kings and presidents and institutions, and they have been wrong every single time, in every single generation. The Emperor Nero was the man of lawlessness. The early world was certain of it. Then it was a medieval pope, and half of Europe staked the Reformation on it. Then it was Napoleon, and a continent believed. Then it was the tyrants of the last century, named with absolute confidence by people holding this very passage open in their hands. Every one of those identifications was made by serious people, often brilliant people, reading these exact words, and every single one of them is now just another entry in the long, embarrassing history of being wrong about this text. That is not the power of this passage, and it never was. The power of it is not a prediction you can pin to a calendar. It is a pattern you can recognize. You do not have to believe a word of the religion behind it to feel the strange weight of a letter written almost 2,000 years ago that describes a hidden force of deception that grips, most completely, the people who already decided they would rather believe a comfortable lie. The watchman in the old image is not pointing at a monster on the horizon. He is pointing at something that, the text says, is already inside the walls. So if this is the first time anyone has actually walked you through what these ancient words say instead of just shouting a name at you, then do one thing for me. Write the word restrainer in the comments, because that is the real mystery. The blank Paul left in the middle of the sentence, the one thing standing between the world and the flood, and I want to know what you think it is. Write it, so I know you made it to the end. And so the next person scrolling past learns that the oldest texts never described the great evil as a creature waiting in the future. They described a force already at work, already deceiving, already sorting, held back by something with no name. Subscribe to the Buried Testament, because every week we go back to the buried corners of these texts and read what they actually say, not what everyone assumes. And the next time someone tells you the darkness is still coming, you can tell them what a frightened little church was told almost 2,000 years ago. It is not coming. According to the oldest letters we have, it is already here. And it has been here the whole time, waiting in the one place no one thought to look. Not out on the horizon, inside the walls, already at work.